Second reading.
Now.
Sarah Champion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the bill be read a second time. I am delighted to bring this bill to the House today. My Public Procurement, British Goods and Services Bill is an important but focused bill. It will make minor amendments to both the Public Services Social Value Act 2012 and the Procurement Act 2023 to encourage greater uptake of British products in UK government contracts. The bill aims to increase transparency and raise the importance of the origin of goods and services, animal welfare standards, environmental impact and the standard of employment in procurement decisions.
Here.
It achieves this by requiring the contracting body to publish their data, demonstrating how these areas are met in the contracts awarded. In 2014, my 10-minute rule bill on publishing the gender pay gap for organisations employing more than 250 staff made a similar obligation. First blocked, then adopted by the government, it has revolutionised transparency and indeed equality within those businesses. So I do hope the government will be similarly pragmatic when it comes to this bill and gives it a safe passage.
Here.
Every year, the UK government spends over £300 billion on public procurement, which accounts for almost a third of all public expenditure. However, despite this huge figure, the Spend Network's analysis found that big corporations win 90% of the contracts that are deemed suitable for small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs. As a result, SMEs are missing out on around £30 billion worth of public contracts annually. That's £30 billion worth that could be going to British businesses. SMEs are the beating heart of our economy, accounting for 99% of businesses in the UK and 61% of employment, which equates to 16.7 million jobs. It's therefore shocking that they are consistently missing out on so many suitable public procurement contracts. In addition, a worrying number of contracts are awarded to foreign suppliers. Research from Tussell found that in 2020 alone, the public sector spent £18 billion with overseas suppliers rather than supporting their UK counterparts. The Public Accounts Committee report, Competition in Public Procurement, published in December, concluded that the government, and I quote, has not demonstrated that it has consistently used its purchasing power to support national and local policies and objectives, or to drive healthy and competitive markets, including buying from SMEs. It also found that the government has, I quote, not been fully capturing data on procurement, much less using the analytics from collected data to draw insights on how competition in public procurement is operating within government and give context to purchasing decisions. This has to change, and my bill can do that. The Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, in its report Public Sector Procurement of Food from April 2021, rightly stated that public procurement, I quote, has the potential to create significant business and growth opportunities through increased participation for small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as improving the public sector's access to SMEs' creativity and innovation. However, it crucially noted that SMEs have long faced difficulties in accessing public procurement opportunities. Of course I will.
I'm very grateful, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Lady is making a very good case. I think she knows that the government has quite a lot of common ground with her policy intent. She may know that officials in the Cabinet Office are preparing for a new national procurement policy statement to set out the government's strategic priorities in relation to procurement. Can I offer the Honourable Lady and her task group an opportunity to meet with the Minister, perhaps first with officials and then, if necessary, with the Minister, also my honourable friend for Colchester in relation to food. I'd be very grateful if she'd take up that opportunity because we would like her expertise and that of the group. I think she knows that because we've only recently legislated, it's very difficult for the government to support her bill. So I hope she'll take up the offer of that meeting.
The Minister, as ever, is trying to find a solution which benefits us both, and that's what I'm trying to do with my bill. So I absolutely take up his offer. Thank you so much for that. I'll talk more about the working group at the end, but I have brought together a group of industry professionals. We all want to see British businesses getting a fair slice of what is a 300 billion pie, because we want our businesses to flourish in this country. So I really thank the offer for that. I really thank the Minister for that offer. Apologies. I've been sat here a long time, Minister. Finally, one more Select Committee report from the Defence Select Committee in July 2023. It simply stated that the UK defence procurement system is broke and that it's time to fix it. So I welcome the Minister's offer. To tackle these long recognised issues within the UK government procurement system, my bill aims to back British businesses for public contracts, champion the UK's world-class manufacturing and food production, increase the visibility of British food procured by the public sector, encourage investment and jobs created in towns and cities across the country, improve transparency around contracts awarded to SMEs, and, just as importantly, recognise and reward good employment practices. Let me give some context to demonstrate the need right now for this bill. The UK is in a recession, and it has experienced years of stagnant economic growth. The number of companies going bust in 2023 hit a 30-year high. More than 25,000 UK company insolvencies were registered last year, and these figures show that 1 in 186 active firms went bust in 2023. This grim economic outlook is compounded by the fact that many SMEs feel shut out of the public procurement system. Taxpayers' money is being spent with big multinationals and foreign suppliers, when as much as possible should be spent on supporting British businesses and jobs, as other countries do with their own industries. The government has long argued that the EU had rules preventing them from prioritising British businesses. Many saw Brexit as an opportunity for more taxpayers' money to be spent with British suppliers. We were told that British businesses would be first in the queue for UK government contracts once we left the EU. The 2019 Conservative Party manifesto even stated, with regard to food procurement, that when we leave the EU, we will be able to encourage the public sector to buy British to support our farmers and reduce environmental cost. This has simply not happened. Now is high time for some of the benefits voters were promised from Brexit to actually come to pass. My bill, if the government accepts it, will deliver more contracts to British businesses. And this isn't a new issue. Since my election in 2012, I have been continuously highlighting how the UK government needs to do more to support British steelmakers through public procurement. The UK steel industry employs almost 40,000 people directly, with another 50,000 jobs supported through the supply chain. It also directly contributes 2.9 billion to the UK economy and adds 3.8 billion indirectly through supply chains. My constituency of Rotherham is a hub for steel production. We're incredibly proud of that heritage. Liberty Steel employs 900 people locally and supports the employment of many more workers throughout the steel chain. We make unique, speciality green steel, much valued around the world, especially in aerospace. Despite the expertise and high-quality steel that Liberty and other steel makers produce, our steel industry still needs government support. And let me be clear, I'm not talking about handouts, I'm talking about public contracts. UK Steel analysis of the 2023 Steel Pipeline Report found that of the total £603 million worth of steel procured by government in the last financial year, 2022-23, only £365 million was UK produced. Furthermore, the British Construction Steel Association analysis of steel used in the HS2 project found that only 58% of steel contracts were awarded to British suppliers. This is despite the UK steel industry having the capacity to have carried out 100% of the work. I welcome the recent introduction of UK steel safeguards and that UK government departments are now required to report past buying and future purchase pipelines of UK-made steel bought by the public purse. These measures, particularly the reporting of where the steel is procured from in projects, are designed to encourage the uptake of UK-produced steel. The mandatory reporting model is a good template for other industries and other departments, and I really welcome it. My bill takes this mechanism and seeks to use it to achieve similar results across the economy, compelling contracting authorities to publish where they are procuring from and to encourage the uptake of goods and services from British suppliers. Let me give another example. I'm sure honourable members are aware that the public procurement system is failing our great British farmers. I strongly believe that we must support our local food producers by ensuring that we buy, sell, make and grow more of our food, entrenching Britain's reputation as a beacon for quality food, high standards and ethical animal treatment. The UK public sector spends around £2.4 billion a year procuring food for organisations such as schools and hospitals, and indeed the armed forces. This accounts for approximately 5.5% of UK food sector sales. Despite this level of spending, there is no accurate measure of how much food the public sector procures from British farmers. My bill will address this. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the British public supports buying British. The online supermarket Ocado reported that 87% of its customers considered it important to support British farmers, with searches for British produce on its website up 77% year on year. I will, of course.
Very grateful to the Honourable Lady giving way, and she conveniently mentions the addition of the Buy British button on Ocado. Would she pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Bosworth, who led a fantastic campaign bringing in that Buy British button on a number of supermarket websites, and would she join my call for all of the others to catch up and do the same?
My honourable friend has a premonition. That was literally my next line. The honourable member for Bosworth should indeed be commended for the Buy British button, and absolutely we should roll that out across all websites, across all suppliers. Every supermarket, every local shop should be proud to say that they stock produce that was made as locally as possible, but British if not. It helps us on so many levels, particularly the environmental, but it supports our workers who are doing an amazing job in a very, very tough environment. So I absolutely support him and his colleague for the work that they have done and are doing around this.
Will you give way?
Of course I will give way.
But as she points out, quite rightly, schools and hospitals, where you don't have a choice of what provider you can go to because you are, by the very nature, in an institution, just like here, don't have that choice because the choice is made by the institution on their behalf. Surely this is the importance of her bill, so that that is reported and we push to ensure that where consumers can't have a choice, the choice on their behalf is the right choice.
I absolutely agree with the point that's raised, and I don't think that anybody procuring with taxpayers' money wants to do a bad job, wants to waste money, isn't procuring at the highest scrutiny that they can possibly impose. What my bill is trying to do is ask them to publish what are the decisions that they're making, and hopefully if future ministers then follow up that data, they can see why decisions are made and how much of that is going to British suppliers. I also think, in his specific example, that parents would love to know the trail of food that their children are eating. And that's backed up by a recent poll by Delta Poll, found that 81% of 4,000 people polled said being able to buy British food was very or fairly important, whilst 94% of people said support of farmers was very or fairly important. Despite overwhelming public and cross-party support for buying British, let's be honest, our farmers are struggling. The Office of National Statistics reported that over 6,000 agricultural businesses have closed since 2017. Meanwhile, the NFU report that business certainty and confidence within British farming is at an all-time low. Alongside the obvious economic and social benefits of buying more British food, such as boosting the economy and creating jobs, there's also ethical reasons for wanting more British food to be procured. The RSPCA has long raised the issue of procuring authorities buying food from overseas that's actually produced to lower standards than in the UK, such as battery eggs and sow stall pork. In the UK, we lead the world in our animal welfare standards. Through my bill focusing on buying British, we will also be contributing to cruelty-free procurement becoming the norm. My bill will require contracting authorities to publish what proportion of food procured originates from suppliers in the UK. This will finally create an accurate measure of how much food the public sector procures from British farmers. I will.
The Honourable Lady for giving way. She's been incredibly generous with her time. I had the privilege of sitting on the Procurement Bill Committee recently, and that was a lengthy piece of legislation dealing with a whole panoply of procurement legislation to make our procurement system fit for the future. I wonder if she could just give some remarks to the House as to why it's important for her bill to progress today when we haven't yet had the results of that bill coming into force and seeing the results of that work that was done.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you and my honourable friend did on that very important bill. What I'm trying to do is aid the process of that rollout, because what I'm saying is, if my bill passes, that the procuring authorities will have to publish what it is they're procuring. So that will be probably the only data available to see if the intention, which was a cross-party intention to try and get more British businesses supporting through our procurement, this will probably be the only data set you have that will be able to see if the rollout of that bill is working. If it isn't, it would then give the ministers the information to actually be more bold in the guidance that will follow, hopefully, or the updated guidance, to show it is ministers' wish that more of that procuring money, if able, if it's not breaching any laws, is going to those very same businesses. So I only see it as a help. I do not in any way see it undermining what's happening.
Or in either way.
And I've answered my next paragraph, so thank you. I mean, the honourable member, there's something going on here. Importantly, this bill does not require public procurement professionals to take any specific action beyond reporting of what's been procured and how it benefits its local environment. Such an obligation cannot reasonably be seen as compromising the UK's international obligations, which I know is a concern that the UK government previously had with Buy British policies. This measure will benefit UK food producers on the principle that what is inspected is generally delivered. And I'm proud that the NFU, Countryside Alliance and the RSPCA all helped me develop this bill and support it. It also feels like the government, and particularly the minister, supports it. And so I do welcome the recent announcement of an independent advisor, the Honourable Member for Colchester, to support their ongoing work to improve the public sector food procurement. The areas of the review are strikingly close to those I seek to address with this bill. So let me say to the Minister that I am incredibly grateful that he has offered the Honourable Member's time and hopefully the civil servants' time so that we can work together for those common aims. Thank you. I now turn to another key driver behind this bill, which is enabling SMEs to access public contracts. As I said, SMEs make up 99% of UK businesses and account for 61% of employment. Despite being the beating heart of our economy, research from the Federation of Small Businesses have found that SMEs are effectively shut out of public procurement systems. Only 1 in 5 SMEs have bid for a public sector contract in the last 3 years. In the construction industry, a sector heavily reliant on SMEs, only 2 in 5 SMEs have bid for a public sector contract in the last 3 years. SMEs need public sector opportunities, that is with experience of between 1 and 9 bids. 49% of them have failed to secure a single contract in the last 3 years. The lack of transparency means they don't know why they failed. Submitting a tendering application is resource heavy. If you keep getting knocked back, you eventually stop trying. And the stats show that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
The National Federation of Builders, a trade association representing the interests of small and medium-sized house builders, told me that one of their members had not successfully bid for a public sector contract for over a decade, even though they were well qualified to deliver. Sadly, this situation is replicated across most sectors. Of course, some SMEs will be rejected for good reasons, but there is clearly a cultural issue around public contracts being awarded to large, often multinational businesses over SMEs. I will, of course, give way.
I thank you for giving way. And quite often, smaller companies are put off because the actual cost of actually tendering for those contracts are so high that if they fail to win them, then it could have a really detrimental impact on their business as a whole.
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and it's that chilling factor that is having a real negative impact on the whole of our SMEs. And there are ways, we debated it as part of the working group, of dividing bigger contracts down so that local SMEs are more inclined to go for them. But unless they know why they fail, unless they know that the door is actually open to them, why would they waste the precious resources that they have on bidding for something which they see as utterly futile? And that's what we have to change. There is clearly a cultural issue, as I said, and this is demonstrated in the fact that 90% of contracts deemed suitable for SMEs are awarded to large corporations. Data from the British Chamber of Commerce found that in 2016, 25% of public sector procurement spending was awarded directly to SMEs. As of 2021, this figure had dropped to 21%. That's only just over £1 in every £5 spent by the UK government on public services going straight to SMEs. This is in stark contrast to the UK government's own 2022 target of spending £1 in every £3 with SMEs. The National Chair of the Federation of Small Business said in August 23, I quote, "Meeting procurement targets isn't just a bureaucratic milestone, it's an affirmation of trust in our small business community." He's right. FMEs offer so much expertise and innovation and must be awarded more suitable public contracts. Frustratingly, when they do get a bite of the cherry, it's usually as a subcontractor, at a much lower remuneration than if they had been the lead, and of course without the public credit. And it's an example of that led me to bring this bill forward. A Rotherham business, an innovation business, leading not only the UK but the world in its innovation, was very grateful for a £1 million contract from government to deliver. However, it found out that it was actually a £10 million contract that had been delivered to a multinational who then subcontracted it down to my business, and they did nothing other than the packaging and the marketing around it. So had my business known that they could have applied, even if they got £2 million, that would have meant that they didn't have to do it just for cost, for what they hoped would be a way into government procurement. They could have done it and made a profit and continued. And at the moment, they're facing a really tough time. By amending Section 1(3) of the Public Sector Social Value Act 2012, my bill seeks to add an obligation for contracting authorities to consider how procurement from small and medium-sized enterprises might improve the well-being in their area. Section 2 of the bill will require contracting authorities to report how they have complied with this obligation. It's hoped that these changes will increase the importance of SMEs within social value tenders and encourage the public sector to award more contracts to them. As I mentioned, billions of pounds of public contracts are awarded to foreign suppliers every year. The most recent data shows that a substantial number of contracts are awarded to foreign suppliers, both directly and indirectly. Indirectly being when a foreign supplier controls the successful applicant for a contract. Of public contracts valued below 200 million, 2.3% were awarded directly to foreign suppliers. However, this number rose to 17.6% when indirect awards are accounted for. This story is similar for contracted values over 200 million. 2.1% were directly awarded to foreign suppliers, whereas 31.5% of contracts were indirectly awarded to foreign suppliers. An example of such a contract is the 1.6 billion Royal Navy contract awarded to a Spanish-led consortium in 2022 over an all-British one. Analysis shows that at least 40% of the work, worth 64 million, will go abroad and be carried out in Spain. To compound this issue, there have been no concrete answers as to whether there is a limit on how many jobs will be created in Spain and why there are no targets for UK steel in the contract.
Am I honourable friend give way?
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for making such significant points and poignant points, really. And I'm sure she's had much thought, given much thought to this. Could she therefore say, why is it that the government has therefore allowed so many procurements to foreign suppliers over British SMEs? What's her thoughts on this?
My honourable friend asked an impossible question, and she might want to ask it again to the Minister. I think that... So in developing this bill, I've had conversations with the Minister, and he's been very open. I know the Minister who's due to reply is also very open to this. I actually think the block is hesitancy when it comes to the legislation and finding a way through, which is why my bill is terribly modest in that it's just looking at getting transparency around where those contracts go, with the hope that that will do enough to influence where they actually land, and hopefully one expects with British businesses. So who knows? And I have to say, it's a question the British public is asking all the time, particularly when their local business goes bust as a consequence of it. So going back to this contract, the £1.6 billion contract, the all-British bid would have generated over 6,000 good UK jobs and supported a full onshore build of the ships. This bid also promised an investment of 90 million in UK shipyards and a further 54 million in training, apprenticeships and improving UK skills base. Had social value to the UK been prioritised, as my bill would encourage, surely it would have won the contract. Instead, a sizable proportion will go abroad at the expense of British jobs and supporting British businesses. My bill raises the level of importance attached to the origin of goods and services in procurement decisions by increasing transparency around how public sector contracts are awarded and encouraging the uptake of British originating products. My bill also seeks to highlight good employment standards within procurement. When developing the bill, the TUC shared with me the dire state of employment standards and working practices within public procurement. To be clear, most employers treat their employees well, but it is common for outsourcing to have a detrimental effect on wages and conditions, with outsourced workers more likely to work longer hours, receive less pay, or be on insecure or temporary contracts.
Will she give way?
I will, of course, give way.
Is it not also a particular problem when you, of course, give a procurement to a foreign company who will be using workers that are based on different standards, different collective bargaining, and it is totally unfair to the British businesses that have to follow British laws and British agreements with trade unions, and actually providing this data will provide a level playing field also to those businesses who know where they're being undercut.
My honourable friend again is absolutely right, and of course if you pay people appallingly, you can then undercut British businesses that want to pay people well, that want to give them the terms and conditions so that work is fulfilling both economically as well as psychologically for them. So yes, we're losing hand over fist with the current situation. My bill would therefore require contracting authorities to consider how it might act to support good employment standards and working practices. My bill defines good employment standards and working practices as including, but not limited to, compliance with national and international obligations in the fields of environment, social and labour law and collective agreements. The bill also requires contracting authorities to include reasonable details about how it has complied with its obligations to meet these standards in a contract award notice. My amendments to existing legislation raise the importance of good work within public procurement and encourage contracting authorities to award contracts to good employers by attempting to replicate Clause 56 of the Public Contracts Regulation 2015. This clause related to excluding suppliers who are not compliant with international and domestic social, labour and environmental laws, and it's designed to stop bad employment practices being tolerated within public procurement, such as fire and rehire, and contractors refusing to implement the annual uplift of the real living wage. Great care has been taken in drafting the bill to avoid including measures that would threaten the UK's international obligations with respect to trade rules and the Agreement on Government Procurement. It is also important to note that my bill would place the responsibility on the contracting authorities, not the suppliers or UK government, to publish data on their compliance with the relevant clauses within Section 2 of the bill. Minister, I hope my bill will also influence the current conversation around reforming the public procurement system. And so I am very grateful that the Minister has offered for myself and the working group to meet with the civil servants and maybe the Minister to make changes, if needed, to the National Procurement Policy Statement. Because, published in June 2021, the NPPS argued that the huge power of public procurement expenditure, I quote, must support the delivery of public sector policy priorities, including generating economic growth, helping our communities recover from COVID-19 pandemic, and supporting the transition to net zero carbon. It goes on to outline how public procurement should be leveraged to support priority national and local outcomes for the public benefit, and that contracting authorities should consider social value outcomes when procuring such goods and services. My bill seeks to cover all of those, but I would be a little stronger on the should to a must. Aside from that, I think we're absolutely on the same page with this. To conclude, my conversations with Rotherham businesses and national industry groups have made it clear that the changes I am proposing are welcome and overdue. I defy the Minister to find anyone in the UK who would not see this as common sense. Implementing them will increase transparency and encourage more public contracts to be awarded to British suppliers. By supporting this bill, the House has an opportunity to demonstrate their support to British manufacturers, builders, farmers and SMEs. I would also like to thank the Labour Frontbench for their support of this bill, and I'm very grateful to the members of the working group who helped me develop it. The TUC, UK Steel, National Farmers Union, RSPCA, YPO, Countryside Alliance, APSI, Bloom Procurement Services, the National Federation of Builders and Jonathan Davey for all the help, support and guidance they have given me with this bill to date. Thank you.